The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. In the late 1980s, the tracks from the defunct Putnam Railroad were removed from Van Cortlandt Park, leaving in its wake a long trail that connects the Bronx with Westchester County. In fact, north of the Bronx, the trail is a paved bicycle and pedestrian path that travels through Tibbetts Brook in Yonkers, V.E. Macy Park in Irvington, Tarrytown Lakes, and more. But in the Bronx, the Putnam Trail is not paved, and yet it is extensively used by walkers, runners, yes, bicyclists, and more. Enter the city's Parks Department. Armed with a federal grant, they propose to pave the Bronx portion of the trail with a 10-foot wide asphalt path and a 3-foot wide dirt path for runners. Wait a minute, says some trail lovers and advocates. You can't pave part of the park. You should preserve its natural riches, while others are saying paving the trail would finally give everyone full use of it. And after a remarkably close community board vote of 3-4, 2 against, and 2 abstentions, that's where we sit, in the midst of, if you'll forgive the pun, a thorny issue. What should be done with the Putnam Trail? Pave it with asphalt, as the Parks Department says, or pave it with another more environmentally friendly substance, as advocates say. Our show tonight is specifically about the Putnam Trail, but more generally about a classic environmental versus practicality issue, as well as the process of identifying community determination as a way of forming public policy. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can call in at 718-960-7241, or you can email questions or comments to us at BronxTalk@hotmail.com, and we'll read those on the air during a future edition of our program. But for now, here in our studio from Transportation Alternative, he supports the Parks Department's plan. Welcome back to Rich Gans. Nice to see you again, sir.
Nice to see you again, Gary.
And from Save the Putnam Trail, against it, it's Sarah Baglio. Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we appreciate both of you being here, and I know you're probably not going to agree, but the idea is to just let people of the Bronx see what actually is going on. So, Rich, let's start with you. Why do you think this is a good idea?
Well, this 1.5 mile Putnam Trail segment is a key link in the overall network of paved multi-use paths in the region. And this trail will connect the existing 40-mile trails in Westchester, to which you referred, which they call the North County and the South County trails, with the Mashalu-Pelham Greenway in the Bronx. So this would provide basically a continuous route from Westchester through Van Cortlandt Park and out to New York Botanical Garden, Bronx Zoo, City Island, Orchard Beach. It's also part of the 1993 Bronx Greenway Plan, which was put forth by Borough President Ferrer at the time and the Bronx Borough Board.
In coordination with a number of Bronxites
Yes.
who weighed in on it. And so
Yes.
what you're saying is this was part of that vision then. Why shouldn't we capitalize on that now, especially because the federal money is there?
Yes, and in addition, I mean, the design that the Parks Department came out with is the end of a long process that included many stakeholders on this subject rejecting other bike routes in the Riverdale area and saying, we'll make the Putnam Trail the bike route. That was said over and over again. I think you remember back, was it 10 or even 15 years ago when the first discussions were held about the Hudson River Greenway. And there was, some opposition.
So they said basically...
People who were opposed to the Hudson
Right.
River Greenway said, we'll make the Putnam Trail the bike trail. And the third thing is that the trail is been designed and approved and funded, and it's ready to construct. And the fact that it includes, in addition to the 10-foot wide asphalt path, it also accommodates runners with and I think it's not dirt, I think it's some kind of improved dirt surface parallel to it.
A running track of some sort.
The plan is, represents a compromise, which we think is excellent and which we fully support.
Let me bring Sarah in then. So we've got a plan that's been really, literally 20 years in the works. It has been laid out. It is ready to go. Remarkably, there's funding for it. It is, frankly, for our audience, we can let them know it's waiting for approval by the DEC, which is still the last piece of review that has to take place, but essentially it's ready to go. Why do you and your group think, you know what, we ought to save the Putnam Trail and not do this?
First, I really want to thank you for having us on here, because it's not often that people who I'm speaking for get a voice in our community, and I really think this is a question of equality for our Bronx community. It's just not in the best interest of everyone in the community. The Putnam Trail, as it is now, is used by walkers and bikers and joggers and families and schools in the Bronx. My husband teaches middle school in the Bronx, brings the students come down and dig in the dirt and look at the pond and the wetlands and use it as a resource, where if it was asphalt, that would be gone. And that would be a real loss for our local children. And it would just be a real shame. I understand that there's this great plan, which is wonderful. I don't understand why a stone dust trail, which is ADA compliant, and yes, you can't go as fast on it with a $3,000 bike, but you could slow down for the 4.5 minutes it would take to go 1.5 miles.
Let me ask you a couple of points about what you've said. First of all, so what if the children don't do their digging or whatever scientific work they do right on the asphalt, but still do it along the shores of the Van Cortlandt Lake or on either side of the trail that would still be there?
So the asphalt, because of its nature, would end up heating up the environment. It wouldn't drain as well. And there's lots of, there's a butterfly that right now I'm blanking on the name on, but is in danger of extinction, that is actually be found on Van Cortlandt. The turtles, because of the asphalt, the eggs wouldn't be able to be laid. So it's, in terms of preserving the nature of the wetlands and the forever wild area, which is why there still needs to be an environmental impact survey done. I don't believe that the nature around it will be as lush and will be as accessible by our community.
The environmental study is another issue, but I do want to ask about the bike riding. Now, I have not done as much riding as I used to. We were talking about that beforehand, but I did ride up the Putnam Trail, and right at the point where it really gets difficult, I said, well, this is nuts, and I abandoned it. So I'm not sure that, what you're saying is true, that, well, so you just go 1.5 miles and you go a little slower. I found personally you were not able to do it. To ride it. As I understand, the federal bill, and maybe Rich can weigh in or you can weigh in as well, requires a paving for bikes and for wheelchair accessibility. Now, we're going to talk about the alternative that you're presenting, which is another whole aspect of this. But if, in fact, this gets turned down, is that federal money still going to be there so that we can pave with another surface or try alternatives? Do you have knowledge of that? Do you have...
Well, I mean, that's one of the points that I wanted to make, Gary, which is, and I'm not going to say that it's not going to be there, but I'm going to say that we certainly have no guarantee that it will be there. So I think that if this plan is actually prevented from going forward, I think there's a very good likelihood that we're going to end up with nothing and have the trail in the condition that it exists now.
Let's take a look at the pictures of it, and so people will know what we're talking about, because when you say Putnam Trail, it's not intuitive to people in the Bronx that they know exactly where it is. This is really the pathway that runs along Van Cortlandt Lake and then goes north from there. So I know we have some photographs. So here's just, we can get rid of that lower thirds there. This is basically what it looks like. And we can keep going, we can scroll through, and you can see that is some of the greenway that currently exists. This is the path as it exists. Now, Rich, this section of it, one would think, what's wrong with this? Why can't we bike over this, and why can't we leave it the way it is, or even improve it slightly?
Well, first of all, I mean, the pictures are selected. There's different conditions at different points in the trail. Number one.
Well, we saw 3 different ones there, as a matter of
Yes,
fact. But go ahead.
and number two, it very much depends on the weather. For example, we had some very heavy rains this past week, and it seems like we're having a lot of heavy rains lately. But
That's another issue, of course.
but many parts of the trail were virtually impassable on this past Friday, which was the day after the rains had ended.
For runners and walkers as well,
I
for
would
just
say
about
so.
for
Yeah,
anybody.
in other words, there was, parts of the trail had considerable standing water, and a lot of it had, a lot of it was, I would say most of it probably was, muddy to very muddy.
Putting asphalt in a park is a very, to me, a dangerous thing. As Ms. Baglio said, it makes it hotter. And we have covered it on this show extensively. If you pave this trail, goodness gracious, isn't this more of the same of the paving of other parkland? And are we now opening the door? Well, the next time somebody else has a good plan, we're going to, asphalt over another part of Van Cortlandt Park or Pelham Bay Park or another spot in the park. Is this, yet another trail in a serious decline of our protection of our parkland?
Well, I think since the Bronx Greenway Plan was released, many trails have been created, and I think that they have very much enhanced the ability of people to enjoy nature. And being able to use them in all-weather situation is very important. Now, as you know, Gary, this is the 125th anniversary of the Bronx Park system that was designed in an amazingly creative
Of course, the
concept.
advocates would say this is the very reason not to touch the Putnam Trail.
Yeah, well, I don't think that that's a valid argument, and
Let's give Sarah a chance to talk about what do you see as alternatives? And I know the website, I must say this, if folks, you should check out the Save the Putnam Trail website, even if you agree or disagree, but it's a wonderful website, and to me it indicated that there were people who really were passionate about this. So explain to me what you think should be done here.
I think it should be, I ran on the trail Saturday morning, as I've run on the trail for the past 7 years, almost every Saturday morning. Through snow, I've cross-country skied on the trail, I've gone through mud on the trail, I've been on the trail when it's dry. There are certainly some places that you need to walk around. I have to say I saw a stroller on the trail this Saturday. I saw bikes on the trail this Saturday. It was a little muddy. But we're not saying that it's not muddy. What we're saying is we would like to see it, if it has to be something, then a stone dust, ADA compliant stone dust trail. Which will be completely passable for you to ride up and get to Points North, where Points North, they have other trails that aren't asphalt, where we in the Bronx have some trails in Van Cortlandt Park, but we don't have flat, soft trails in which for our elderly to go to. And so if it's a stone dust trail, it is ADA compliant, and everybody can go on it. Bikers, runners, they might have to go a little slower.
I got 2 questions for. I probably have more if I sit here long enough. But number one, would that trail survive storms and the number
Absolutely.
of storms? And it would survive it, and it wouldn't wash away a stone dust trail.
There would have to be maintenance, as there would have to be maintenance with asphalt. But the first 2 years are maintenance free, and we have funding from private organizations that say that they would help support it, and it would be $2.3 million, which is I have from
$2.3 million to pave
to do the asphalt.
it.
It would be $272,000 to do the stone dust. So we clearly have money.
Can you maintain or promise to maintain a trail with private organizations and have them approve a project based on this notion, well, we have people who are going to maintain it, as opposed to having it written in quote-unquote stone how it would be maintained?
There has been history of stone dust trails being maintained.
You wanted to weigh in about some of the, I saw you nodding your head. If not, I want to show some more pictures.
well, if you're talking about, I'm very much questioning the figure about 200 and something thousand for stone dust, because the opponents to paving are citing the idea that an alternative trail would be usable for bikers, ADA compliant, appropriate for people in wheelchairs, baby strollers, etc.
Right.
And I believe that that is sort of theoretically true. If you have a very well designed and very well maintained stone dust
What's
trail.
the however on that?
However, first of all, I think that the cost savings are not true at all, because
You question the
cost
integrity of their figures.
The cost of constructing an ADA compliant trail is very significant. They have to lay the foundation and prepare the drainage, very similar to what you would do with asphalt. It doesn't, what would never even come close to meeting those requirements would be to take stone dust and basically put it on top of what we have now.
Sarah, what do you think of what he says?
I have
in
a
other words,
quote from the
He
Appalachian.
says it's not true. What you're saying is not really possible to build a trail that would accommodate all the needs within the framework that you've laid out.
So I have a quote from the Appalachian Mountain Club for
Okay.
exactly this trail. And yes, it's got to do a sub base at whatever it is, $50 a yard delivered at $105,000. And I've got erosion control materials and equipment. And the total cost estimate plus 15% overhead is $272,000 and $350.
We do have a phone call we're going to get to. I want to just show a couple more of these photos, Jane. So and Shirley, let's see what we got here. Okay, this is currently as it is, that there are people with motorbikes, although of course, as we established earlier, there are parts of the trail that you can do this on, and of course then further north, of course, you can't, certainly with bikes. Now this is the picture I want you both to weigh in on. Sarah, why don't you explain what it is that we're looking at here?
Okay, this is two members of Save the Putnam Trail, and the black part on the picture is the current width of the trail. The extended part on the picture, the brown, is the proposed paved trail. Cutting out, if you cut out, I think it was like 8 feet on either side, we'll end up cutting down 63,000 square feet of trees and plant life over just a mile and a half.
Rich, what do you think? I mean, this to me would certainly be a deal breaker if you're really going to lose all of that lush, natural green area in a Bronx park.
Okay, first of all, it's very important to keep in mind that this is not a natural area. This is an abandoned rail line. This is a passenger service and freight service line that ran for close to 100 years.
Sure.
With, I imagine, coal trains, I know diesel trains, etc. And there's still many remnants of that, including the rail ties that have toxic material in them, creosote.
So what's the relevance of that point in this? Because now there certainly
Well,
is
but the
overgrowth and there is
plan-
wildlife and other...
The plan is very specific that there are only going to be 4 mature trees removed. Now, this is something that we believe that the
4 mature trees out of
Correct.
all that space? Do you
and more
question
than
the
four
space that you
and
saw?
more than 400 will be planted by the Parks Department of native trees. Now, my experience with the Parks Department in the past 15, 20 years is they're very serious about their stewardship of natural areas.
I'm going to personally disagree. We're in the middle of a fight with right around here, around the reservoir. But I think the question is, do you question the visual of what we saw there?
All I can say is I can't validate it.
Okay. Let's go to the telephone. Ann from Riverdale is calling in. Hello, Ann.
Hi.
Thank you
I
for
just
joining
wanted
us.
to say really quickly that really happy that Sarah's on there to represent the views of people in the Bronx who are concerned about the environment, and I hope that she does it, that she keeps fighting for this because it's important to a lot of families.
Okay,
Thank
Ann.
you.
You got to support. Rich, that would be a sidewind suggest that you're not concerned with the environment. You've been a lifelong Bronxite. How would you respond to that?
Well, have been an advocate for the environment, among other things, a very strong and active opponent of the filtration plant, which took over a considerable amount of of Van Cortlandt Park with huge construction and tremendous cost overruns, among other things.
I think it would be an interesting charge to levy against a bicyclist that he's not for the environment because, of course, he's not using the cars and everything else. John from Riverdale is calling in. Of course, it's a North Bronx issue, so we expect a lot of folks in the North Bronx calling. Hi, John.
Hi there, Gary. We have here this trail being referred to as an abandoned railroad.
Okay. Well, it is. There's no doubt that's what it was.
57 years.
So what's your point?
I birded the park for 57 years. I birded it when it was an active railroad, when it was a defunct railroad, and for the past 30 years that it was a nature trail.
Okay, so we do have some pictures of birds there. John, thank you very much. Go ahead,
I
Sarah.
just want to speak to what John said. The truth is the trail was envisioned, I think, just by being on it as long as I have, which is not as long as you guys have been in the Bronx, but it's curved. A railway is not, if it was just the railroad, it would just be a straight line, straight up to Westchester. And the fact that when they built the trail, when they removed the railroad part of it and they curved it, I think that the original proponents of the trail wanted it to be a nature trail. I think it was started as a nature trail. And to say that it's abandoned and that it's not used,
well, I don't think he said it was not used. He said it was an abandoned railroad.
It's been said that it's abandoned and that it's a swamp. And the truth is that those of us in the community who use it don't see it that way.
I want to go back to just something else that occurred to me. What if you were right and they turn it down and they say, well, okay, let's put this stone dust trail in there, but then the federal government says, you know what, that's not what this grant was for, and then you lose the whole thing. What happens then?
Me personally, I'm very happy.
You're very happy. So for you, it's as much the replacement, but you'd like it to not be
If it
touched
has
at
to
all.
be replaced, then I'd like it. Then it should be stone dust.
Then it's not wheelchair accessible, and the hundreds
No,
of
it is. It is. No. Oh, if it's not.
If it's not touched, then
well,
it's
if
not
the federal
wheelchair
government, that's not my issue. If you're asking me personally, I would say I enjoy running on it as it is. To make it ADA compliant, to make it more accessible to our community, then make it stone dust.
And I assume for you, if that were to happen, you would say, goodness gracious, 20 years of trying to establish a Bronx Greenway is now down the...
Well, I think it would be a real shame to lose this opportunity to connect to this important link. And I believe, and I strongly believe, that the trail will be environmentally excellent when it is completed, especially as time goes on. And I just wanted to mention, we took a ride from Van Cortlandt Park to City Island, commemorating the 125th anniversary of the Bronx Park system. And, it was all on trails connecting the parks. And you have a picture here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Jane, let's put up the pictures, some of the ones that Transportation Alternatives put out. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to see what picture you're putting up.
There you go. Yeah, this is, I've ridden on that a number of times. That looks like the path on the way to City Island.
That's what, you're correct. That's one of the paths on the way to City Island. So the ecology and the trees and the canopy is very, very much intact.
It's a lovely place to ride.
Yes.
Sarah, and then here's well, this is a shot of bike riders on the current path, but let's go back to the other one, Jane, if we can.
The one we're looking at right now is we used that path, which was just really like 100 feet or something, and that's, I think, closer to what the anti-paving people are proposing as their end goal. That is kind of an improved unpaved path.
Right. Sarah, what did you make of that picture right there? The one where that's the pathway on the way to City Island. I've ridden there, not recently, but a number of times, and it is a lovely ride. It's a quiet little path all the way through, Bronx Park. What do you think?
I think I saw a lot of bikers. And I didn't see elderly walking. I didn't see birders. I didn't see children. I didn't see strollers. I didn't see older runners who maybe can't run on asphalt because of their knees. I didn't see a community slowly enjoying nature.
Let's go to the next shot there if we can. There was one more there. I think there was one after that, folks. We've seen that one. This one. Now, this one is another one that Transportation Alternatives
that's
put up.
a picture of the South County Trail, which is a continuation of the Putnam Trail in Westchester.
Sarah, you don't like that?
When I run up to the Westchester line, I am very careful to stay on the side of that trail because I've run 3 marathons and it hurts my knees. So I try and run on that skinny part. And what they're offering to runners is a 3-foot on the side of the trail. Well, when we run, we are a community. And we want to be able to talk to each other. And if I'm biking with my children.
Well, 3 feet on either side, you can't really run side by side.
That's right. We can't.
Well, but that's what you're proposing is 8 feet in the middle and 3 feet on
No.
either side.
Well, that's what they're proposing. As a runner, I can run on stone dust without a problem.
You have a website that we want to put up. Let's put up that website. It is
SaveThePutnamTrail.com.
And Rich, you have, I guess, Transportation Alternatives or
Yes.
other information?
Yes.
So what is the deal with what's next, Rich? What do you think?
Honestly, I don't know the answer to that.
I told you we had a thorny one here tonight.
I believe that the plan as stands now will be approved, but I don't know that that's true.
I didn't address the issue of an EIS because in so many of these cases it becomes a deal breaker because it takes too long and there's nobody to pay for it. So, whether it needs one or not, I suppose that could be debated. For you, what do you see as next? And can you get in the way of this process, this train that seems to be running and, interrupt it so that something else is considered when this has been in the works for so long?
I guess I hope we can. I feel like we're the little engine that could, to continue with your train metaphor, and we're going up against a lot of big money and a lot of big politics, and we are a small community who really just want to keep the trail as it is for future generations and for ourselves.
I want to thank both of you, Rich Gans and Sarah Baglio, for joining us tonight. I knew they weren't going to agree when they left, but that's the borough of the Bronx. It's nice and diverse, and we appreciate you joining us tonight and presenting your views.
Thank you very much.
Folks, if you have further comments or questions on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, then email them to us at BronxTalk@hotmail.com or make a comment on our Facebook page, and we'll read those on the air during a future edition of our program. In fact, we've already gotten comments on this issue on our Facebook page, and we'll try to put some of those on the air. Archives of Bronx Talk are available at bronxnet.org. You click Bronx Talk on the right-hand navigation bar. Also, please become a fan of our show, Bronx Talk, on Facebook. Next Monday night, we'll talk about similar issues, as I mentioned earlier. Do we want a soccer stadium in the Bronx? If so, where? Do we need the mayor's proposal to protect the city from future storms? And what about other land use issues versus parkland issues? We'll have environmentalists and economists on the show, and we'll review all those types of topics. Also, make a note that mayoral candidate John Catsimatidis will join us on July 8th. And then on July 29th, mark down on your calendar, we'll start an unprecedented series of 6 political debates that will run each week through August. Wow. Lots going on in Bronx Talk as always. We'll see you next week. Good night.